Welcome to this week's edition of the Fantasy Football Dojo. I am Mike Krause.
I'm Mark Krause.
We're the Super Fantasy Brothers today. Kirk may show up at some point, but we're going to handle this until he does. This is we're back with a vengeance after last week.
Yeah, sorry about last week. Big bye week for everybody, so all the scores were down probably. But
the Ravens had to call us in. The coordinator needed some help, so and we put up points.
Plus, we caught baseball playoff fever. Go O's.
Yeah, that was side note. I know this is a football show, but we were lucky enough to go to the Orioles game on Friday, and probably the best sporting event I've ever been to in my life.
Big shout out to my wife, who scored us tickets by surprise. Thanks, hon. Big ups. You're the MVP of the week.
You're the real MVP.
You the real MVP, says Kevin Durant. But, side note, football podcast. But, man, that baseball game was the best sporting event I've ever been to. It was crazy.
Doubt. And I've been to a WrestleMania.
Well, there you go.
So
the loudest I've ever seen a stadium or heard a stadium. So
absolutely.
Let's get right down to it. So we're at the quarter pole here. We're 4 weeks through what most leagues consider a 16-week season because really nobody plays in week 17. This is the time when you need to be decisive and you need to start making decisions and evaluate your players and other people's players. And, the playoffs aren't going to wait for you. So if you're at least 2-2 or worse, you probably need to start evaluating what you're going to do with your team. And we're going to help you do that. We've got some players that, it's a little segment I like to call "What?", which is basically things that you thought you'd never say going into the draft. But we're going to discuss them and make some recommendations. So let's get right into it. I've got a couple players here. I want to get your opinion on this, Mike. These are a couple guys that, depending on your league, and if you're in a 10-team league, this is probably the case. If you got better options, I would feel okay dropping these guys. I've got 4 players in mind here. Number 1 is Andre Ellington, the Cardinals running back. That team's 3-0, but he hasn't had 20 touches in a game. He's got 9 total catches in 3 games, and for a running back that you thought was going to supplement his value with receiving yardage and catches and PPR value, he hasn't been there, and he didn't get the 1 goal line carry his team got. The former Cardinal Jonathan Dwyer had that touchdown. So
it's a weird situation. Obviously, his hype train went off the rails, but they just came off a bye week. By the way, one of the worst bye weeks of the season because we had the Bengals, the Broncos.
Oh, the Broncos, Seattle, Arizona.
It was bad.
6 teams, and 4 of them were legit fantasy.
Yeah. So now that that's over, I would say I'm with you on that. I would maybe bench him before dropping him. Maybe give it a week or two coming out of the bye week. Maybe they regrouped and realized they weren't using him like they should. But without a doubt, he's not. I wouldn't start him if you have, any of the other top 20 running backs.
It's a situation by situation situation. But
allow myself to introduce myself.
Exactly. But if you've got some guy that's hot on the waiver wire that you need to pick up, or if you've got guys that were injured and are now healthy, I wouldn't feel bad about not playing Ellington until he proves otherwise.
You put him in a hold pattern. That's definitely not a problem.
This next guy, I've dropped off a couple of different teams, and it's Shane Vereen. It's your boyfriend.
Yeah.
I'm terribly sorry, but he's been miserable.
Shane Vereen can go jump off a cliff. I mean...
So here's the stats on Vereen. The most touches he's had is 13 touches.
I've had more touches than that.
That's another story. But anyway, Stephen Ridley's had more than twice as many rushing attempts, 57 to 28.
Yeah, he just won't go away.
The New England offense clearly can't support 2 running backs at this point. They're averaging 20 points a game, and they've played what I would consider 2 poor defenses, a decent defense, and Kansas City's probably a high-end defense.
It was a game against Oakland. All signs point to Shane Vereen having a historical game. And I saw a couple stats that did say that was his second best matchup of the whole season, based on stats.
Yeah.
So
they're not getting any better.
Yeah, they're just getting worse. I mean, other than Gronk in that offense, and he's getting touchdowns, but not a lot of yards or catches. Yeah, you don't start anyone in that offense.
They've just looked miserable. I don't even know what to do with New England.
I mean, I would hate to do it, but if I had limited bench space and it was a competitive league, I would drop him. I'd let someone else worry about that mess. I mean, that's pretty bad.
The next guy is a guy that breaks my heart. This is my Shane Vereen. It's Cordero Patterson. Man, Cordero Patterson's been bad since week 1. I don't even know what to say.
Not even his fault, though. I mean,
it's not his fault because their offense has been miserable and the quarterbacks have been terrible. But he's had 25 targets in 5 games.
Yeah.
That's an average of 5 looks a game.
Yeah, I mean, with Bridgewater, if he comes back healthy, Bridgewater's a great player to have, especially if he can be your second quarterback and kind of play the matchups with him because of his running ability. But no one besides Castle, is really getting the ball to Patterson the way they should. Plus, defenses are just like, look, we've either got Christian Ponder or a rookie quarterback out there, so we're going to just jam Patterson as much as we can. Yeah. And there's no Adrian Peterson, so it's just a byproduct of his environment. But yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those scenarios. If you can hold him and see if they can get a stable quarterback going. But yeah, I mean, Wright. What's the first name?
Jarius Wright.
Yeah, Jarius Wright had a breakout game.
They came out with a game plan of wide receiver screens and underneath stuff, and it was all Jarius Wright. So you can't even think that Patterson's going to get that work. Right. I've got him in a league where I should have played John Brown over him this week. That's how far Cordell Patterson has dropped. Yeah. I love John Brown, but nobody knew who John Brown was.
I did
3 weeks ago.
I had him at the draft in PPR.
Well, you're super deep sleeper, guys. So. Oh, yeah. Also, his fantasy value was supposed to be supplemented by rushing. He hasn't had a rushing attempt since week 1,
right?
Since he broke that 60-yarder.
And you'd think with one of the top 3 talented running backs in the league out, that they would have maybe thrown some running plays in for him. I did
see a couple of quotes where Norv Turner was interviewed, and they were like, "What's up with the no rushing with Cordell Patterson?" He's like, "We just haven't been able to do it. The game plan hasn't been there
because they've been down.
Because they've been scheming for it. Yeah. The defense has been scheming for it. So." I haven't seen the 11-on-11 film or whatever, or the all-22 film or whatever. I'm not Jaws, so I don't really go through the tape. But
I truly believe Patterson will come back.
I'll take Norv's word for it. The last guy on this list is Cam Newton, who I also have on at least one team. Cam's had 1 touchdown a game. He hasn't turned the ball over at all, which is good news. But they've really put the straitjacket on him. They haven't let him do a whole lot. Their coaches have been interviewed, and they've said that his ribs aren't right, so they don't feel good about him getting hit. So the most rushing yards he's had was in week 1 with 19 yards.
Yeah,
he's not running the ball. The only rushing he's doing is when he's getting out of the pocket and scrambling for his life. He also plays Cincinnati and Seattle in 2 of the next 4 weeks. So this is go time, man. It's going to be weeks 5, 6, 7, and 8. In a lot of these leagues, you've got to be at least in a 13-week regular season, you got to have at least 8 wins to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
if your team's down and Cam Newton's your quarterback, you can't roll with him.
I mean, it's sad when you consider starting Mike Glennon over him. You know what I mean? So
this year more than any other year, it really depends on the matchup.
Yeah.
I mean, if I've got Glennon in a good matchup against Newton, it sounds weird, but yeah, I mean, I can't play Cam and expect more than maybe 10 points.
Your best bet with Cam is you have to hope someone in your league somehow believes in him or just likes him as a player, and you get some value for him, because otherwise he's not really startable at this point. That's sad.
I'd make him my backup and start whoever else you've got at quarterback. In most leagues, there's going to be a guy on the waiver wire that's legit. I picked up Romo in the league I have Newton in. I'm going to start Romo.
Yeah.
And, his ceiling's not super high, but he's got Des Bryant, and he's got a bunch of other weapons.
That's the thing. Benjamin has really broken out for Carolina, but you can't rely on a rookie to take you to the promised land.
The other thing is, too, this is a perfect example of the old law of fantasy. You can have a great receiver and an average quarterback.
Right.
Just because you've got a quarterback that's hampered doesn't mean your receiver can't be great. Mm-hmm. And Benjamin's a must start. I mean, that guy's played great.
He's turned into one, yeah.
He would have had 2 touchdowns last week, but one got called back. He was like an inch onto the sideline in the end zone.
Yeah.
The next 2 guys I've got are what I call mirages. They're guys that have put up big value in the first couple of weeks, but I don't think it's going to continue for different reasons. First one's Matt Ryan, and it kills me to say it because I'm a Falcons fan.
Yeah.
I think we might have mentioned this on the pod at some point. He's going to get 1 game in the Georgia Dome between now and week 12.
Yeah, that's pathetic.
1 indoor game in the Georgia Dome, and that's against the Bears. That's probably going to be a barn burner. But the rest of the games between now and week 12 coming up on your fantasy playoffs are either on the road outdoors, on a bye for a week, and then he's got this game in London where they're the home team against the Lions.
Oh.
It's just bad all over. For
London games
matchups.
Are so bad.
The London games are terrible. I don't even know why they bother doing it, but
they're better than Thursday night games, but they're not much better.
The only thing that is a saving grace for Matt Ryan is that the fantasy playoff schedule for him, 14, 15, and 16, is at Green Bay, Pittsburgh, and at New Orleans.
Yeah, that's pretty tasty, but you have to hope you get there. But
you have to get there first.
Yeah.
This is a player where if you can look at a player in your league, an owner in your league, and they need a quarterback, and they say, wow, Matt Ryan's put up huge numbers, deal him. If you can get 80% of his face value, go for it if you've got another quarterback.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have fun with him over the next 6 to 8 weeks as he's floundering around outdoors and playing in London. And the bye week's in a bad spot, too. I think it's week 8 or 9.
Yeah.
But that's a guy who you can definitely sell high on if you can make the right deal. The other one's Eddie Royal. Eddie Royal's just, I mean, I don't know what to say about Eddie Royal other than he just takes short passes and breaks them for long touchdowns, which is not something you can repeat. Ask Victor Cruz about that. And Keenan Allen had 10 catches last week. So I don't see Eddie Royal putting up the stats that he's put up in the past month.
I bought into Keenan Allen in a lot of leagues, and I mean that was a good sign last week. But every time I see Royal or Malcolm Floyd get a touchdown, it kills me.
Well, here's the good news for you: that San Diego's got a legit offense. Yes. Their schedule's reasonable, and I think Keenan Allen's going to be the best receiver out of those three from here on out.
Yeah, Eddie Royal did the same thing last year. The exact same thing.
I did watch a lot of that San Diego game last week, and they look for Keenan Allen a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got more targets than Royal. He's definitely their best receiver talent-wise. So I would stick with Allen. As an offshoot of the Eddie Royal bit, if you can get Keenan Allen cheap, go for it.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's got 0 touchdowns on the year. You might be able to catch somebody sleeping and say, hey, can I give you Matt Asiata for Keenan Allen if they need a running back or something and get him. These last guys are players that have either done poorly, and I think they're going to do better, or they've done great, and I think they're going to keep it up. Andrew Luck's the best quarterback in fantasy.
Yep.
There is no arguing this. There is no debate.
And borderline in real football, too, at this point.
Let's not get crazy yet. They haven't really played anybody, but that's kind of what's going to happen for the rest of the season.
Yeah, they're in a putrid division.
He has one matchup that I would even consider not playing him, and it's against Cincinnati for the rest of the season. The rest of the weeks are just horrid matchups against defenses that are getting up points. If you can, this is the one quarterback in the whole league that if you want to make a trade for him and you feel like giving him value for, I would be okay with it.
Yeah.
If you want to pay what he is living up to right now in a trade, I'm okay with it. The rest of the guys, I mean, you can't go out there and trade for Aaron Rodgers right now because he's on fire, and you're going to have to give up too much to get him. But if you need a quarterback and you want to go out there and make a move and trade somebody significant for him, I'm good with that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I don't see there being a super low floor. You know what I mean? His floor is still really high.
And he spreads the ball around to everybody.
Yep.
Running backs, tight ends, wide receivers. It hampers all their values, but it makes Luck a really great fantasy quarterback.
He has the most touchdowns in the league, and he doesn't have a receiver with more than one touchdown, which is crazy. It's
a good move.
Yeah.
Eddie Lacy finally picked it up. This was the one guy I was going to key on last week if we were on the air. Eddie Lacy is going to be Eddie Lacy from here on out. The Green Bay offense got their act together, and they faced 3 really good run defenses in the first 3 weeks. So if you can still get a guy that doesn't believe in Eddie Lacy and he's mad about drafting him, go get him because he looked pretty dominant on Thursday night. And granted, Minnesota's defense isn't great, but
it looked like he was playing against my defense in Madden.
Wow. That's strong.
Like no tackling happened
you have no defense
at all. There was no tackles made. People were bouncing off of him like he had a force field.
So if you're worried about Eddie Lacy, if you're worried about the part of Eddie Lacy that is Eddie Lacy, if you know what I'm getting at, not schedule dependency and offense and everything else.
Just
Eddie Lacy's fine.
Running style. Yes.
Eddie Lacy's fine. Yeah. The other factors weren't working in his favor, but that's going to turn around. The last guy on my list of people to talk about before we get into the games this week is LaShawn McCoy, and he's pretty much the hot topic in fantasy this week. Because if you own LaShawn McCoy, oh, God bless you. I don't know how you are still, playing this game anymore.
Last
if you got
2 weeks,
McCoy.
29 carries, 39 yards.
He's averaging 2.7 yards a carry this year. And he's only got 64 yards receiving total for the year. Right. He's not giving you anything.
No.
Philly faces Seattle in Week 14. The make or break fantasy football playoff week.
That's hard.
And if you can get 80% of what you drafted him at value wise, go do it because I can't figure out Philly's offense. I can figure out their defense. They're horrible.
Yeah, because if you drafted him, he's obviously in most leagues, unless they were really iffy, you got him top 3.
You had to.
So you really you either got mid-tier receivers or no other running backs. So if you can get multiple picks or multiple players or future picks if you're in a dynasty or a keeper league, you definitely should do that if someone believes in him. So I mean, there's the whole regression to the mean theory. Obviously, starting really bad against some good defenses. Better, but he's not going to come anywhere near his numbers from last year, which is what people drafted based on.
If you are not ahead of the curve, but you can still convince somebody that he's worth a top 10 player, then do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he'll be better, but he's not going to be LaShawn McCoy. There's no reason to think that offense, as good as they are, although they looked terrible last week, is going to support him being a top 5 running back. I don't necessarily think it's all his fault. I think it's a lot like what went on with Lacy. Right. Although I don't see things changing. The Green Bay offense needs Lacy more than Philly's offense needs McCoy.
Oh, absolutely.
That's my opinion, but I think that's a pretty strong case that backs it up.
As a quick aside, just like the year prior, and pretty much every year in fantasy at this point, the top 5 running backs, at least at this point, the only one that's even putting up numbers close to what they were worth is Charles, even though he missed a game due to injury, but he bounced back with the 3-touchdown game last week and just destroyed the Patriots single-handedly. So
looking back on it, you'd have been way better off having a pick at the end of the first round than a top 5 pick, because if you ended up with like the 10th pick out of 10 teams taking Jimmy Graham, or I mean, there's only 1 or 2 players in the first round, consensus first round players, that have done anything.
Yeah, look at Calvin Johnson.
Calvin Johnson's been miserable.
Which we'll get to him in a little bit.
I mean, it's a minefield out there. Yeah. The league is really won in round 6 to 12.
Yep.
I mean, that's where you're going to get all your value. All right, let's get into the games. 1:00, Baltimore at Indianapolis.
A lot of people are predicting this to be a shootout because, again, as being a Ravens fan, I can attest to their secondary being smoke and mirrors at this point. They've only given up 3 touchdowns on the season in the air, but they're bad.
They haven't faced an offense this good.
No, and we do a lot of bend but don't break mentality. So I don't know how many in the red zone touchdowns are going to be made, but I guarantee there'll be some touchdowns from long distance. So it's going to, I don't know. I think you're definitely starting Reggie Wayne in a flex or a wide receiver too, if you need him in that position. T.Y. Hilton is a go for sure.
I don't think the Ravens have anybody that can keep up with T.Y. Hilton.
They can't. And he's going to blow by Elam. I mean, it's going to happen.
Hilton hasn't had a T.Y. Hilton 150-yard 2-touchdown game yet. He's bound to have a couple this year. It could happen.
I don't really like their tight ends. Just they haven't really blown up yet. But, I mean, we don't cover the middle of the field very well. So, I mean, anything. If you're in a PPR league, pretty much anyone that can catch a ball on Indy today is not a bad play.
Yeah, not a bad play at all.
But I don't like their running backs. We have a pretty good run defense. And not that if you had to start one of them, I think you start Bradshaw. He's been running with purpose.
Well, that's what I'm checking now is to see if Bradshaw's playing.
Yeah, he was questionable. We'll check on that. On the Ravens side of the ball, you have to just ride Steve Smith Sr. into the sunset because he is fired up. He knows he's got a chance to win a championship after being in Carolina all those years, and he's just playing with a chip on his shoulder bigger than he is. So he paid off last week. I started him because it was a rivalry game, and he literally wants to set his old teammates on fire. Literally, he does not even figuratively.
Bradshaw is active, by the way.
Yeah, so you do play Bradshaw
Bradshaw's
today.
A good start.
But with the Ravens, Torrey Smith did get a touchdown last week. He's been pretty much just a decoy up to this point. I think they're going to work him in a little bit more now that he's got a touchdown under his belt. Still, though, he's a gamble at this point. But yeah, you definitely go Steve Smith. I still think Owen Daniels is not like he's a top 7 or 8 tight end play, but you could do worse. I mean, if you're
desperate for somebody,
right? If you're on a bye week or you just don't like the matchups, Owen Daniels is going to get some work. And then the running back situation with the Ravens is just mind-boggling. Forsett looks like the better runner of everyone right now. He's getting bursts to the outside, but I think if you're going just off of overall total yards, if you're in a league that you just need someone to fill in and flex, Forsett's pretty good. But Taliaferro's got the better chance to score a touchdown because they like to work him in the red zone. He's just a bruiser. The guy's a monster.
I don't know that I would play Taliaferro unless you had to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
he didn't even see the field until the second half last week, and that was pretty much in a blowout.
Yeah, these aren't great plays, but you don't play Bernard Pierce. If anyone thought Bernard Pierce was going to take over for Ray Rice and run with it, man, it's not happening. So
the other thing that's notable about the Ravens is that Eugene Monroe's out. He's their starting left tackle. So their offensive line's been great so far this year, but they're going to be weakened because of that. Yeah,
Flacco's actually looked better than he has in the past year or two in the regular season. That is, I mean, he's not a horrible play, especially 2 quarterback leagues. He's definitely a start there. The producer is cheering because he's been riding Joe Flacco this season.
He's been riding Flacco this year.
I still think he has a pretty good game today. I mean, I wouldn't doubt 275 and 2 touchdowns. Indy's not a strong defense.
No, they're not.
And the offense for the Ravens has been pretty balanced, so it is opening up the passing game a little more. So I don't know. I mean, again, not a huge play for Flacco, but he's startable for sure. But yeah, I mean, the big plays here are unfortunately on the Colts side. So Andrew Luck, T.Y. Hilton. I still don't like Hakeem Nicks, but I mean, if
I wouldn't play Nicks unless you absolutely had to. Right. The only buys this week, by the way, are Oakland and Miami.
Not huge fantasy plays.
Who are you missing? Mike Wallace?
Yeah.
Maybe Lamar Smith. That's really about it. If you're starting an Oakland Raider, you're in trouble to begin with. So by missing them, if you're in trouble, you're in even worse shape.
By the way, all right, so 2 weeks ago on our last show, my lay it on the line was one of the Raiders receivers to go for 100 yards, and they didn't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm a donkey. But it happens. All right, let's move on.
Next game's going to be Falcons at Giants.
Points everywhere.
Can we just change the Falcons' name to the Atlanta Indoor Falcons?
Yes.
Can we do that? Because they are a completely different team outdoors. I don't know how to explain it. It's been going on for years. I follow that team pretty closely. I don't know what to do with them. There is no way I would take them in any sort of suicide pool.
It would be suicide.
It would be suicide to take them outdoors. They're playing the Giants. The Giants are on the upswing. I would play your Atlanta Falcons only because you probably have to.
You have to play Julio Jones.
You got to play Julio Jones.
You probably have to play Roddy White.
Yes.
And Matt Ryan.
I wouldn't start Steven Jackson.
No.
If you have Matt Ryan, he maybe was your backup to start the year, so you might have a better option at quarterback. If you do, go with it. Ryan played pretty well last week, but if you look at those stats, they were pretty deceiving. There was a Devin Hester swing pass that turned into a 20-yard touchdown. And Minnesota's defense is not as good as they might be as good as the Giants' defense, but the Giants are at home, and their defense is actually average at home. It's not good, but it's at least average.
Yeah. And you've got the round robin kind of coin flip of Toilolo, Antone Smith, and Hester, basically. You're not going to play any of those guys, but they're going to hurt Roddy White and Julio Jones at some point.
Value. And if they're in close, you're probably not going to see Steven Jackson because they're probably going to do some sort of play action pass or bootleg or something. Yeah. Harry Douglas is out, so that probably
helps. That helps Julio Jones and Roddy White a little bit.
That helps the other receivers a little bit. But as far as the Giants, expert fantasy manager Larry Donnell is probably on the list of guys you would start. If you guys hadn't heard, he has himself on his own fantasy league and benched himself and lost because he scored 3 touchdowns.
Yes.
Way
one
back
of the best
when,
stories I've ever heard in my life.
The Redskins-Giants game that feels like it was 3 years ago.
It was.
That was the game for Larry Donnell. I like Donnell. I've got him on a team, and
You've been talking about Donnell since the first week,
I had him since week 1 because I watched him on Monday Night Football get every single red zone target for the Giants. Yeah. So, I'm down with him.
He's an unguardable person in the red zone.
He's a brick wall with a head, basically, is what it amounts to. You can't really cover him inside the 5-yard
I'm starting
line.
to call him Sentinel.
Sentinel. That's good. That's a good one.
Because he just...
For a fantasy podcast that's on a video game network, Sentinel's an apt comparison.
Yes.
As far as the other Giants players, start everybody, man. The Falcons don't play defense. The Falcons will just chase you around the field and hope you fall down.
My problem is I have to start Rashad. Yeah, it's like a Pee Wee league.
It's like a Pee Wee league. You're just watching guys running around. Rashad Jennings is going to come back this week.
You better hope maybe Victor Cruz's mom will be there with not only chunky soup but with some orange slices because they're going to be tired. Everyone there is tired this week. Rashad Jennings, I have to play him in a bunch of leagues. I'm afraid he's going to be benched in the third quarter for Andre Williams
It won't
because
be
they're
that
going
bad.
to smoke them.
Atlanta's going to score some points. It's not going to be like that playoff game a couple years ago where Atlanta scored 2 points in New York. They'll score some points. They'll keep up, but New York's going to win this game.
But yeah, Jennings is good. If you are in a tough spot with running back due to injuries or suspensions or whatever, Andre Williams, like I said, that is the hot sleeper pick this week because he could get 13 touches.
I don't buy it. They're not going to be blowing Atlanta out like they did Washington.
Yeah. But Victor Cruz, definitely a good play. Donnell.
Yeah.
Sadly, I never thought I would say this year. I'm starting Eli Manning in one.
I was just going to say it hurts my soul to say that Eli Manning is a decent fantasy pick, but this is a weird year for quarterbacks.
Yep.
If you need a guy,
you take value when you can get it.
Take value when you can get it, and I'll play Eli Manning over some guys. I'll play him over Brady. I'll play him over Alex Smith.
Yeah.
I'd make him.
We didn't get to the Patriots game yet, but since you spoke of Brady, he's not even rosterable pretty much at this point. Which that is shocking, but it's true.
You can't, and the only reason I didn't put him on my list of players is because it's old news.
Yeah, it's obvious.
It's obvious.
It started last season, really.
You don't play Brady anymore. Next up on the list is Detroit hosting the Buffalo Bills. Now,
it's a weird game.
It's a weird game because the Bills are going to be starting notable neckbeard sporter Kyle Orton, which I feel really helps Sammy Watkins a lot. I know it's been said by other people in the fantasy industry. If you can get I picked up Sammy Watkins on free agency in the league.
That's crazy.
Somebody dropped him. I picked him up. Although, I will say this. I'll give credit to this guy who will remain unnamed because I dropped Ellington and he picked up Ellington.
You guys swapped.
So I basically traded Ellington for Watkins through free agency.
That's interesting.
Because I have a million running backs and he had too many receivers. But
if you can get
Watkins for a song right now, if somebody's looking at his stat line and going, "Jeez, he's horrible," it will pick up for Sammy Watkins because he's been open. He just can't get the ball from E.J. Manuel.
Yeah, he's very talented.
Kyle Orton's not a stud, but Orton's going to at least get the number one receiver the ball when he's open.
He also looks like Keanu Reeves with a neckbeard, like an overweight Keanu Reeves.
He also looked a lot like John Hodgman, noted comedian John Hodgman. If you've seen pictures.
I can't place the
anyway.
face, but
so I like Watkins from here on out. I don't know that he's going to do a whole lot in this game, but I'm starting him in the league I have him in. Detroit's defense has been really good.
It has, yeah.
Now, who knows when that's going to end? Because every year this happens, and they look great for the first half of the season.
I'm starting Detroit's defense in the league. I mean, it's anytime against Buffalo. They managed to put up some points, but they don't put up a lot of yards. Now, like you said, Orton's kind of a weird, strange. I'll call him a Y factor because I don't want to call him an X factor.
Oh, there you go. All right.
But yeah, I didn't have a choice really. I streamed defenses, and the best one available seemed to be the Lions because they're going to create some turnovers. You're not going to, even though you're a veteran quarterback like Orton, you're not going to come in and not throw a turnover when you got Sue breathing down your neck and all kinds of stuff happening. I mean, what about the Lions' offensive players? The big thing here is Calvin Johnson is questionable.
Calvin has done more in practice this week than he did last week. You're in a situation where if you have him, you have to play him.
Yeah,
I don't know what he's going to do. Last week was a big disappointment because he was basically a decoy out there.
Yeah.
But it's not like you're going to sit him and watch him score 3 touchdowns or something. So it's kind of a moot point. Reggie Bush is an interesting.
I like Bush this week. I mean, he's been a little bit of a disappointment, but since Joique Bell is most likely
Bell's
out,
he's inactive. So is Theo Riddick.
Okay.
So Bush is your guy in the backfield. Now they're facing the Bills' rush defense, which is a good rush defense. But if you're waiting for Reggie Bush to be the guy, this is the week where he's going to be the guy, at least for a week. So he's probably a top 15 play. If you've got him, you probably have to start him. I'd feel good at least about, 80 total yards and a touchdown probably, which is good enough to start in most leagues.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he's going to get 20 touches.
He'd almost have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Unless they abandon the run for whatever reason and just have a weird improper game plan. But if they're planning
he'll catch passes out of the backfield too. Reggie Bush is a good
Golden
play this
Tate's
week.
a good play this week
Golden
too.
Tate's a really good play this week. Buffalo has given up some yardage to receivers.
Tate is what we thought he was. He continuously, at least in PPR leagues, is putting up.
He's at least consistent.
5 to 8 catches and 50 to 80 yards basically. So that's good, especially if you got him in a flex or a third wide receiver spot.
Next up is Steelers Jags.
Oh, real quick, Stafford though, with Calvin being questionable.
I'd be okay with Stafford only because the Bills' pass defense isn't as good as their rush defense. I think Calvin does do a little more than last week, So I'd feel okay with him as a starter.
Oh, yeah, because
if you're trying to pick between him and like Matt Ryan, for example, and there's a lot of teams with those two as quarterbacks, I'd take Stafford.
Okay. But you're not replacing Stafford with someone like Eli Manning. See, that's the.
Oh, I hate to trust Eli Manning.
I know.
That's the terrible part. I'd go with the better guy, and that's Stafford. I know that's a bit much just because Eli had a great game a week ago, but I'd stick with Stafford.
Okay.
Just because I'd hate to bench Stafford and have Eli go out there and throw 4 picks and be miserable.
Yeah, that is the extreme downside of Eli's. He can be real good.
He's got a
but
really
he can
low
be real
floor.
bad.
He's got a really low floor.
And then you got that Eli, the Manning face.
Then you get Manning face,
Yeah.
and that doesn't work for anybody. So Steelers, Jags. You could make a decent living just following the Jaguars around.
Yeah.
In any sort of pool or whatever you have. The Steelers are got to be bitter this week because they gave one away against Tampa.
Oh, absolutely.
Week. So if you're a fan of trying to figure out what trends are going to happen in this game, you've got a really messed up Pittsburgh team going into an inferior Jacksonville Jaguar team. Although a lot of these Florida teams have really sapped the strength of these other offenses because of the weather.
Yeah.
It's going to be hot in Jacksonville like it always is. Pittsburgh's a northern team. That might be overthinking it a little bit. Regardless, you've got to start all your big-name Steelers players.
This makes Roethlisberger a top 7 quarterback this week.
I think so.
Maybe even top 5 because they're slinging it. They're not the run team that they used to be. And, obviously Antonio Brown is going to have a great game.
You got to start
and
Antonio Brown.
Le'Veon Bell will run over people.
Le'Veon Bell's going to wear out the Jacksonville defense. Yeah. Le'Veon Bell was supposed to have a big game last week and had a good but not great game. I think this is where it all catches up and he has a big game. Yeah. I like Le'Veon Bell quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
As far as Jacksonville, I don't know, man. Shorts is out again.
Yeah.
They're running Clay Harbor out there at tight end. Marquise Lee's out.
Allen, the real deal, Hearns.
Allen Hearns is on the field. Blake Bortles is out there. I don't know. Pittsburgh's defense isn't great, but I don't think I'd start any of the Jaguars.
It's just hard to figure out who could actually score on that team.
I have no idea.
So,
Toby Gerhardt's miserable.
I still like Bortles for the future. Like I really do think Bortles at some point in this season is going to put up some numbers if they get some more receivers back on the field. Because, he's one of those guys that he'll get an interception or 2 per game, but you're hoping he just gets 3 or 4 touchdowns once they get receivers in place. So, yeah, I think if they do get Lee back and Shorts out there, Bortles isn't a bad play, and it would be nice if they're out there this week because Pittsburgh's defense is slow. Yeah. They aren't what they used to be, but
they're undermanned. So.
Yeah, basically start no one from Jacksonville.
I would,
unless you absolutely have to, and then pretty much start anyone you feel on Pittsburgh. It's pretty easy formula.
Well, because I didn't have the guts to take the Steelers against the Jaguars, my suicide pick this week is the Saints hosting the Buccaneers.
You're a brave man.
I am a little bit.
Saints have looked a little weird this year.
And I was unaware of this until basically yesterday because it didn't happen until Thursday, and we were in baseball fantasy mode.
Oh, yeah.
Or baseball playoff mode, I should say.
No, it was a fantasy.
Watching
the Orioles
fantastic.
in a playoff game is just fantastic.
Jarris Bird is not going to be in for the rest of the year.
Yep.
He tore a knee ligament. He's gone, which hurts the Saints defense quite a bit. I'm going to go out on a limb here and stand behind my suicide pick. The Saints win this game handily. Tampa Bay is not as good as them. I know the Saints haven't looked good, but they've been in weird spots. The Saints are just dying to get back home and pound on somebody. And as we've all found out, Sean Payton's not afraid to run up the score.
Absolutely not.
So I like the Saints today. I like Brandon Cooks. I like the running backs. I like Jimmy. Well, who doesn't like Jimmy Graham? Marcus Colston's a good play. I think they get back on track.
I actually got a question last night at a house party.
Ooh, house party question.
House party question.
Was it from kid or play?
It was. I believe it was play.
No, a play. Okay, all right.
So it was. I believe it was a 10-team league, standard scoring, non-PPR.
All right.
Do you start Andre Johnson, who's questionable but supposedly will play? I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, and or Kiri Robinson. And it blew me away too. And I mean, I was a couple drinks in, but I was even having trouble figuring this one out in my brain. Andre Johnson hasn't really done a whole lot this year.
Andre Johnson is active.
Yeah, so I mean, he's going to play. And my thing was, it's standard scoring, so the Saints have so many people that they can pass the ball around to. I mean, you'll have fullbacks in there sometimes too in the red zone that just catch little 1-yard passes.
So what was your answer? I've got mine.
I said, unfortunately, I wanted to go with Johnson because it's Dallas, although they're not as bad as they have been on defense this year, but I went with Robinson.
I'd take Johnson.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I would take Johnson. Even though it's standard scoring, Kyrie Robinson looked good last week against Dallas, but I think they're way too diverse in offense to really feel good about one guy.
It really was a coin flip, and the rest of his team was ridiculous, so it didn't really matter. He has a lot of other depth, but yeah, that particular one was a really, really interesting toss-up. So,
for the Bucks, Mike Evans is out.
Ooh, that hurts him for sure.
Deshaun Goldson is also out, their best safety.
Yeah,
which isn't going to help them very much.
I actually do. Vincent Jackson just finds ways to score no matter what the scenario is.
Vincent Jackson's the one Buccaneer that I like this week.
Glennon. He's gonna. I do like Glennon. I mean, I wouldn't start him over your big name guys. But
be tough to find somebody I'd pick Glennon over.
Yeah, I mean, Vincent Jackson, in the absolute trashing on Thursday night, he threw the defender to the ground in the end zone, but it was so much of a blowout they didn't care. So he still got a touchdown there. I mean, he's had like 9 points in PPR the last 2 weeks.
Well, here's the thing.
But he's getting touchdown looks.
Anytime a number 2 receiver goes down, you have to make a decision on the number 1 receiver.
Yeah.
Is it going to benefit him or is it going to hurt him? I think it benefits him because I don't think the Saints are that strong defensively.
They're not.
Especially with Bird out, to keep Jackson under wraps. I think Jackson has a game. I don't know if it's going to be this gigantic game, but I think he's a starter, and I think you're going to start him over guys that you would probably question whether you're going to start him over. Would I start him over Victor Cruz, for example? Yeah. Would I start him over Colston on the other side of the ball? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's their number 1 target, and they're going to need him. That's really the bottom line.
Yeah.
Do I like Doug Martin? No, I don't like Doug Martin.
No, and for that matter, don't buy into Bobby Rainey.
No.
I mean, yeah, he had a 140-yard game or something like that, but you can't rely on that.
Doug Martin's going to get most of the carries, and I don't understand how you're Doug Martin and you score that touchdown last week and go in backwards and throw your hands up in the air and feel good about yourself. I'm sorry. I don't get that.
Yeah, you need to slow your roll a little bit.
Yeah,
Score a couple more of those.
Doug Martin. Get more than 40 yards on the ground, and we can feel good about you. Next up, because we got to get moving. Cowboys Texans. Well, there you go.
Yep. The interesting part about this game is I heard a stat that the Cowboys give up a ton of touchdowns to tight ends.
Yeah, they don't guard the tight end very well.
So, which makes Garrett Graham actually an interesting sleeper pick because they've given up 6 touchdowns already to tight ends this year.
If you're desperate, why not?
Yeah, but aside from that, we just talked about Andre Johnson. Yeah, he's healthy.
I like Andre Johnson.
Yeah, definitely. Start him if you can. Des Bryant is going to have a field day like he always does. He's unguardable.
Yeah, I don't know that Houston has anybody that's going to really guard.
No.
And the Cowboys' offensive line is arguably the best in the league. So if anybody's going to slow down J.J. Watt, this would be the team to do it.
Yeah, if you have DeMarco Murray, don't be scared. It's not like he's going to get single-handedly.
You'd have to play your Cowboys.
Yeah,
you'd have to play Bryant, Murray, and probably Terrence Williams if you have him.
But I'm just saying is I would still expect he's going to continue riding this 100-yard and at least a touchdown wave.
The Texans are one of the weaker 3-1 teams in the league. Yeah. But I think the Texans will score some points. Arian Foster is active.
Yeah.
I would start Arian
Their
Foster.
big guns are active finally all at the same time.
DeAndre Hopkins is a good play.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this one's a bit of a shootout.
Yeah.
I think both teams at least get into the high 20s.
I'm hoping. I need one of those games out of Romo finally because unfortunately in 1 or 2 leagues I did draft Romo and he hasn't been the last 2 games he hasn't been terrible.
Yeah.
But I need that big game. I need 3 or 4 touchdowns out of him.
Romo
I need
puts
something.
up points, but he does it in weird ways.
Yeah.
In that you can go a whole first half and have him be horrible,
Exactly.
and still he ends up with like 20 points at the end of the game. He'll scare you to death, but he'll put up points. Rams Eagles is next. I don't know.
We all are praying in the fantasy world that the Eagles wake up during this game. And actually, I have Foles. That game last week was just heartbreaking. That is just.
If you're a Nick Foles owner, you're so mad after last week. Although playing San Francisco is not a great matchup.
No, but still.
The thing that's great about having Nick Foles as your quarterback is that he's a volume play.
Yeah.
Like he just throws the ball a million times and you'll end up with some points. That didn't happen last week.
Yeah, Matt, we're gonna just throw last week out, even though it hurt. But we're just gonna move on from that.
I think that's not a bad idea. I think if you have an Eagles player, you feel good about it.
Macklin in particular, I really like Macklin.
They've got Janoris Jenkins is the number one corner for the Rams, and he can cover guys, but he can't cover everybody.
Right.
So if you got Zach Ertz, I think he gets back on track. If you've got Sproles, I think Sproles contributes a little more than he has in the past couple of weeks. I feel good about the Eagles. I would start Foles.
I need Mega Ertz to step it up.
Mega Ertz has got to come to play for you.
Yeah, I mean, I have him in so many leagues, and he started off really well. But
the converse of this, by the way, is that the Rams players are all at least a little bit boosted in value.
Yeah.
Because they're going up against the Eagles' sieve of a defense.
Yep, like we've been talking about all year. No, that slipped my mind.
Brian Quick?
Yeah, Brian Quick in PPR leagues.
Brian Quick's a play.
Still definitely a play.
I don't think Zach Stacy owners have anything to worry about today.
Play Zach Stacy.
If you're really desperate for a quarterback, throw Austin Davis out there.
Yeah.
Why not?
He hasn't been that bad.
He hasn't been bad. You can look at his stat line. He hasn't been terrible. I think that the Rams can score some points.
Seeing what the 49ers did to the Eagles last week, the Rams defense was at one point, at least during early in the season, known to be able to put some pressure on. Do you somehow start either of these defenses?
No.
I don't.
Because
Because you think it's going to be a shootout?
I don't start either one because I don't know about a shootout, but I don't think either one of these teams turns the ball over a ton. The Eagles get Lane Johnson back, which helps them offensive line wise because they've been just killed on the offensive line with injuries. I just don't think there's a whole lot here for fantasy defenses because, yeah, I mean, if their defense does well as a team, you might hold either one of these offenses under 20 points. That doesn't mean you're going to get good fantasy numbers out of them. Next up is Browns-Titans.
Ugh.
This is like Browns-Titans? Okay. I don't know that I'd start anybody on either one of these teams and feel great about it unless you had to. In a PPR league, Andrew Hawkins is a decent play.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like what Kendall Wright's done this year at all.
No, he's actually been a massive
disappointment. He's going to be probably covered by Joe Hayden.
Yes.
The only guy on Tennessee that I'd feel okay about is Bishop Sankey.
Mm-hmm.
Sankey may be this may be the game where Sankey turns the corner and becomes the starter for them this year, which everybody's been waiting on forever, but it hasn't happened.
He did score last week.
He did score last week. He had a lot of carries, so Sankey's a decent play. As far as Cleveland's running back, Ben Tate's going to play, which means you got three guys there that can get carries.
You definitely can't start Crowell anymore.
You can't start any of those guys as far as I'm concerned because you don't know who's going to be the one that gets the carries. If one of them popped up and had 100 yards and a touchdown, it wouldn't blow me away, but I don't know who that's going to be.
Yeah. Do you like the Browns? I mean, I love the Browns defense.
I like the Browns defense
because Tennessee. It's by default that Tennessee has been so bad.
Because Locker's going to play, but that doesn't really mean anything at this point. And like I said, their receivers haven't done anything. Justin Hunter's hype train has come to a screeching halt.
There's been rumors that they're shopping him.
Who's going to take him?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that they're already in the mode now where it seems like any of the little bit of talent they have, they're trying to shop it around.
I don't think Delaney Walker is going to do what he's done in the past 3 weeks, which has just been great against the Browns defense that does okay against the tight end.
Right.
I don't. If the Browns go out there and win this game 13-3, I won't be shocked.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to be a boring game to watch. The last 1 o'clock game is Bears-Panthers. D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart are out.
Shocker.
Mike Tolbert, I think, is on IR with designated return. I Darren Reeves is their starting running back.
Nope.
I don't want any part of anybody on Carolina other than Kelvin Benjamin.
Greg Olsen.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess.
Because you probably have to start him because
I mean, if
you drafted him,
as
a number one tight end.
For the Bears, Jamon Bushrod's out, who's probably their best offensive lineman. I can't figure out Carolina's defense. I don't know whether they're good or not. The Ravens made them look terrible.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a Bears skill player, you got to start him because he's probably a guy that you've been dying to start.
Was there any new updates on Brandon Marshall?
Marshall's not inactive.
Okay.
Jeffrey, Marshall, all their skill players are going to play. So you got to start them all.
And Forte finally had a nice game last week.
Forte had a decent game.
So hopefully he gets in the end zone, but he had a lot of volume last week. Yeah. So, I'd say, like you said, start all the skill players for sure.
Yep. And, I mean, if you're going to start Cutler, go ahead and start Cutler. I'm not worried about him. Carolina's like I said, Carolina made Joe Flacco look awfully good last week, so I wouldn't worry about Cutler. You got 4 o'clock games. Arizona at Denver might be the best game of the whole day as far as just watching football. Arizona's got a good team, and they're playing with the backup quarterback. Is Carson Palmer going to play today? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows at this point.
I thought no on that, but we can double check.
But either way, you're not going to start Fitzgerald,
no.
Which sounds like blasphemy, but you're just not going to.
It's tough at this point to start him.
I can't start him. I don't feel good about playing him with either quarterback in. Michael Floyd's a good play.
Mm-hmm.
John Brown, we mentioned earlier, is a decent play. If you're looking at Denver players, I'd temper my expectations, but I'd still start them.
Yeah, I absolutely would. Emmanuel Sanders
Monte Ball hasn't looked great, but I'd still play him.
You're playing Ball. But, no, I mean, Sanders, at some point we thought with Welker coming back and just in general he might cool off. They start literally every game throwing him the ball 5 times in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Like, I guess it's because he is that much better than the people covering him. Yeah, obviously not being the number 1 receiver or anything. So it works out for them, but it also works out for us because if you drafted Emmanuel Sanders, you probably were hoping to start him at a 2 or flex. He's putting up almost borderline receiver 1 numbers in that offense. So, that's great. Julius Thomas should have a very nice game. Like he always does.
For whatever reason, Arizona doesn't cover tight ends well. Now, Denver plays him like Jimmy Graham is played in New Orleans.
He's
not
receiver.
A literal tight end. He does line up outside more than most tight ends, but you're not going to bench Julius Thomas. Ellington's a guy we talked about. I think Ellington could have a decent game because Denver's defense isn't great. They're okay. They didn't hold down Kansas City's running backs when they played Kansas City.
Right.
So if you're going to play, if you're still holding on to Ellington and you like him in a matchup, this is probably one to play him in. I know that goes against what I said earlier, but what I was talking about earlier is sort of a long-range prediction.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying, too, is, I mean, if you have to play him, play him. Otherwise, if you can hold and see what happens in the next week or two coming off the bye. But, you could do worse.
Yeah. The other 4 o'clock games, let's see here. We've got Kansas City at San Francisco. Jamal Charles is back.
Oh, yeah.
We
back
love
with
that.
a vengeance.
Jamal Charles and his paper-mache ankles are back in the game. We like that. You might be scared about playing him against San Francisco, but you don't have much of a choice. If you're a Jamal Charles owner and you've been waiting for him for 3 weeks to get healthy, go out there and play him. He certainly helped.
The great thing was seeing him catch that little screen pass in the red zone. That was really nice to see.
Yeah.
So all signs are a go for him.
Do we feel good about Alex Smith because he's mad at his former team?
I don't think that's the reason you feel good about him. You feel good about him because he's throwing touchdowns. I mean, Kelsey is looking really nice.
Travis Kelce's a nice play.
I think Alex Smith's definitely a startable quarterback today, without a doubt. San Francisco again really locked down the Eagles. I think that was just a weird scenario to be honest. I mean, I don't. It was horrible for everyone involved. But I don't expect 49ers defense to do that week in and week out like they used to be able to.
The Chiefs defense is a weird sort of, expectation. I don't know how good I feel about the Niners offensive players because Kansas City's defense has played really well.
Yeah, I don't feel too good about it.
I've got Kaepernick in a league and I'm not starting him. I'm playing Romo over him.
Yeah.
I've got Crabtree in a couple leagues. I don't think I'm starting him in any of them because I've got better options, but also because I don't feel that great about Crabtree because he always seems to have some sort of weird lower body injury in the second quarter of every game.
Yeah.
Vernon Davis probably plays from what I'm hearing, but he's not 100%.
He's also got multiple injuries.
I don't like the Niners offense.
Yeah.
Even though they're at home, I don't like them. I really don't.
If they're going to win that game, it will be more defensive for sure.
It'll be one of these
It'll be an ugly
gut-wrenching 17-10, barn burners. The last 4 o'clock game is Jets at Chargers. The Chargers passing offense, you should play everybody.
Mm-hmm.
The Jets can't cover the pass. There's probably no team in the league that has such a discrepancy between rush defense and pass defense. They'll stop anybody on the ground, and they won't do anything against the pass. I don't like Donald Brown. What a crapper Donald Brown's been. Like, the guy gets the starting job, has 1 million carries, and can't do anything with them.
Oh.
Against the Jets front seven, it's going to continue. I wouldn't start Donald Brown. Phil Rivers is probably a top 5 quarterback this week. Keenan Allen's on the rise. He gets a ton of targets. We talked about him briefly. Antonio Gates.
You're definitely starting.
Play Gates.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking at there. I like the San Diego defense. If you streamed him last week against Jacksonville like I did in one league, hang on to him for at least one more week because I don't think the Jets' turnover machine of an offense is going to really.
Do we see Michael Vick
good
in the next week or two?
I don't think so because I think
they're just going to ride or die.
I think the Jets are going to be stubborn to a fault here and keep Geno in, and that's great for anybody playing the Jets.
Yeah.
San Diego's defense is a good play today for probably the last time in a while because their defense isn't great for fantasy purposes, but they're a decent defense in real life.
Are you buying into everyone that's saying Chris Ivory's on the rise in fantasy?
Yeah, but I don't know what that means in hard numbers.
Yeah.
Because I think San Diego's defense is enough to keep him from doing huge damage. I also think they invested enough in Chris Johnson to where Ivory might get the majority of the looks, but I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to get like 30 touches a game. And I still think they're going to throw the ball enough to keep his value sort of minimized. Right. So I like Ivory as a number 2 running back or a flex guy, but I wouldn't rely on him to score big points for you.
Gotcha.
We don't know what Eric Decker's status is. Decker was supposed to be hampered last week and played and looked decent, and then this week he's been, in and out of practice. Since it's a 4:00 game, you can't really start him.
No.
If it was a 1:00 game and he was healthy, I'd feel good about him as like a number 2 or 3 receiver. But at a 4:00 game, you can't wait to find out whether his hamstring's okay or not.
Yeah.
So, that's really all I have to say about that game. I don't like the Jets defense at all as a fantasy defense.
No.
Cincinnati at New England is your night game.
Do the Patriots wake up? Because this is almost like their last stand.
I don't think so.
I mean, all signs point to absolutely not. But again, weird things happen.
Cincinnati's defense is legit.
Yeah.
They had a week off. And I don't think they're scared of New England. If you remember last year, Cincinnati played New England great. And New England's offense didn't do anything. I wouldn't play any Patriots not named Rob Gronkowski.
Nope.
And if you're even thinking about throwing their defense out there after last Monday, don't.
No. I made that mistake.
It's a dark day for New England Patriots fans and owners of their fantasy players.
That era has come to a close, whether they want to admit it or not.
I mean, there's a lot of experts out there that'll go, I'm not believing Tom Brady's dead until he's in the ground. But stay ahead of the curve, kids. I don't know what else to say. That offense is miserable, and they've been that way all year.
Yeah.
Let's not pretend like they've been good up to this point.
It's just been flatline.
Yeah,
there's nothing.
They've been competent to decent. When they played the Raiders and couldn't score more than 16 points, that was a really telling game. Right. If you didn't see it coming, that's your fault. New England's offense is nothing to write home about. For the Cincinnati players, AJ Green, Bernard, even Dalton. Go ahead and throw Dalton out there. I'm usually more down on Andy Dalton than most people. I'd play him this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I would play Dalton. I'd definitely play Gio.
AJ Green's going to get back on track.
Well, yeah, of course. What do we think about Sanu?
Here's the thing. I'm not a big fan of Sanu for one reason, and that's because I don't think their offense on the road is a dominant offense. I think their big-name guys have enough to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like Sanu more than like a wide receiver 3.
Okay.
But that's, I mean,
I'm one of many that are waiting for him to kind of break out because he's got the size and talent to do it in that offense.
And the other reason is because I don't see New England's defense as being competent enough to shut anybody down. Let's put it this way: I don't see them shading all the coverage over to AJ Green enough to where
leave him open.
You're going to leave him open. I don't know. I just don't think Sanu's a
Yeah.
big play, especially at 8:30.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's a 1 o'clock player, maybe you have to consider him, but I don't know. The Monday night game, Seattle and the Redskins. The Redskins tight end situation, something I've been keeping track of. You can't trust any of these guys because they're all hurt, and they're all various shades of gray as far as what they can do and what they can't do.
So you're saying the Redskins are 50 Shades of Gray?
Yes, exactly. 50 Shades of crappy gray.
Niles Paul's head exploded.
He
went across the middle and almost died.
He's been up to the point where I actually picked him up in a league where I needed a tight end, and now I don't know if I can play him. He's questionable, but he's been practicing.
Like you said, he's had
week.
like 14 days to recover because they played on last 2 Thursdays ago.
If you need Niles Paul to play, you need to be able to go pick up Logan Paulson or somebody if he doesn't end up playing.
But it's still against Seattle.
But it's Seattle on the
Like,
road,
yeah.
and if you're gonna be okay with anybody on an offense playing Seattle on the road, it's the tight end.
Yeah.
I mean, now granted, it's a desperate play either
Yeah.
way, but I don't like any of the Redskins.
So in our shared team, we benched Garcon.
That's an excellent example.
Yeah.
We have Garcon. We benched him in favor of Brandon Cooks.
Right.
And it's a PPR league.
It's a pure matchup decision at that
matchup-driven
point.
decision based on the fact that Seattle's defense is great.
Yeah.
As far as Seattle's offense, I'd play everybody. If you want to play Percy Harvin, if you want to play, Lynch, obviously. If you're debating between Russell Wilson and, say, fake write-in question of Ben Roethlisberger, who do you like between Russell Wilson and Ben Roethlisberger?
Roethlisberger.
You think so?
Yeah.
You think Jacksonville's that bad?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh they're looking to exercise the demons a little bit there. They'd like to put up probably 45 and just get back.
And
into the
that's
swing
a
of
good
things.
point. And you could go out there and see Seattle roll it up on Washington and Wilson still not have a great game.
The thing is, everyone wants to be like, well, they just got blown out by the Giants at home. Eli made them look foolish. For some reason, I feel like that game's going to be closer than we want to believe.
Seattle, Washington?
Yeah. And I don't know why. I just have a feeling about it where
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a blowout like everyone thinks. But for back to fantasy purposes, yeah. I mean, Wilson's not a bad play at all. But I think Harvin has a huge game. And definitely Lynch. Lynch is 100 yards plus and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think all the people that were worried about Lynch losing carries to Christian Michael
Yeah.
feel a little goofy right now.
Yeah. No, Lynch is solid. Real solid.
Well, that's all the games, Mike.
Yeah, we blew through that pretty quick.
We've got a couple minutes to spare, but again, if you got football questions, at Football Dojo
Yep.
on Twitter, we're gonna address your questions. We're here to help. Next week we'll be back at 11:30.
Oh yeah.
Kirk will probably be here.
Yep. We
That'd
should
be good.
have him back. I believe he's doing something in the country today, or at
well,
least
that's
did that
exciting.
yesterday. I don't know, but
Picking apples or
yeah,
something.
I mean, there's a lot of apple festivals
There's
this
a lot
year.
of apple festivals this time of year. He's got things to do, and that's okay.
In fantasy fruit leagues, apples are a start.
Apples are a start, absolutely, this time of year.
It's delicious.
Corn is down, apples are up, as they say. All right, well, that's about it for us. Go O's. 3:45
Go
today.
O's. They're sweeping.
Go O's.
They're sweeping.
We got to get the sweep.
Get the brooms out.
All right, well, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the games. Enjoy your apple festivals, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.